let's get more on this. And let's join by former Director of Communications for No.10, Jonathan Haslam. Jonathan, this decision announced by Theresa May today to her local newspaper, the Maidenhead Advertiser. Are you surprised she's taken this, or should we have seen this one coming?
I'm not particularly surprised, and I think it's great, actually, for local newspapers that they get the news first, because they are actually a bulwark of democracy. So, not a surprise. She's 67. She's had a good innings. She's been a Prime Minister. She's also done a great deal of good work. I mean, she says in her leaving statement that she wants to spend more time looking at issues of human slavery, for example, and trafficking, which she spends a lot of time on. Clearly, she, married to Philip. They're quite comfortably off, I should imagine. And she's had a few years on the backbenches, which she's recognised, and that's good. So it's not a surprise. I think one thing I would say about her in particular is a degree of dignity that she's shown after leaving office as Prime Minister.
Because she was carried on from the backbenches.
Yes, and Sarah, she had the most torrid time. Because if you want to poison Chalice, you take over the Conservative Party after Brexit, when David Cameron stepped down, and you try to hold a warring party together. And she did her best. And her style of management, very clearly shown in the Home Office, is to actually keep a tight lid on things. And therefore, nothing moves without her knowing. And that's a very difficult thing to do in Downing Street, particularly if you're not a particularly clubbable person, because House of Commons needs that rapport with the Prime Minister and backbenchers on your own side. And she did make a number of significant mistakes during the course of that.
I mean, that was seen when she came into office. That was actually seen as a good thing that she wasn't clubbable, wasn't it? After all of the sort of cronyism of the past, that actually here was Theresa May who played it straight.
Yes.
But
yes.
It didn't do her any favours.
No, and we've seen what clubbability does afterwards through a couple of the people who've been in as well. So she's got a mixture, but she's not a natural politician. She hasn't got the empathy that attracts politicians. And we've seen her have very difficult times. When the manifesto, when she called an election at the wrong time, went completely pear-shaped, and she was forced to say, nothing has changed, when everything had changed. That very sad coughing fit that she suffered demonstrated that,
the set falling down during that conference speech around her, which was seen as, but very much a metaphor.
But also a sense of humanity as well. You remember the robot dance that she did?
Oh, yes, we remember the robot dance. Have we got it? Here we are. It's just another excuse to...
Well, I think that shows somebody who's not, living on their dignity, Sarah. So she's a complex character. She's very, very intelligent. She had a terrible time at No.10. I don't think anybody would doubt her. And I know I've heard some of the remarks that, viewers have been sending in to you. Her love of the country, her desire to fight for the best of the country. I don't think anybody on the Labour benches, on the Conservative benches, any other Parliament, and right-minded, fair-minded people in the country would say, yeah, she did have the country at heart. She may have got a whole bunch of things wrong, but she tried, and it was tough.
When she was Home Secretary and she said that infamous phrase now, a hostile environment, she was criticised by fellow politicians, criticised by the UN. They said that led to a surge of xenophobia in this country. There's a danger now we're glossing over we say the mistakes, but these things in the Windrush scandal, they changed people's lives, they ruined people's lives. That was on her.
Yeah, there's nobody saying that she was, the greatest Home Secretary since, the post was invented. And I think, JJ, we've got to be honest about that, and I haven't glossed over some of the mistakes she's made. But you need to look at the Home Office as, that graveyard of political ambitions. She came above that. You can argue about police numbers. I do argue about it. I hate it when politicians tell us that we've increased numbers by 20,000 when they were cut by 25,000. So we're not fools, and we don't like that kind of thing. But overall, she has done a number of very good things. She's got some things against her on the scorecard. She will be remembered, and I think that people will have, fair-minded people will give her a 5 out of 10 under incredibly difficult circumstances. The jobs that she's held are enormously difficult and testing, and the circumstances in which she was pitchforked into taking them were equally tough. But she's a volunteer, So she has to take that as well.
One of her problems, and you alluded to it with the inability to show empathy, really, was around charisma. And actually, that's an issue we're still dealing with this election, isn't it? When we're faced with Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, not naturally the most ebullient or vivacious, and then also both struggling sometimes. I mean, Rishi Sunak this week struggling to show empathy where it should.
It is a bit difficult, actually. You know, we've got to give him credit for, you know, being our first member of a minority group in the country to take the highest office, and that's a great thing. But you can't get away from the fact that actually he is the elite of the elite. I mean, he's married into an incredibly wealthy. He's a technocrat. But the analogy I take is with Mario Draghi. In Europe, you find quite a lot of these people in high political positions who are technocrats, not particularly allied to one side or the other, but quite effective at running things, and that's Sunak. And Starmer is much of the same cut in many ways. Probably different in private. Certainly the perception that people had of John Major, from the John Major I know, I knew at the time, and I know now because I still see him, the warmth that John Major could bring out in private engagements, even in a room with 200 people, would be completely different from what you see on our screens. And it's a difficult thing to transcend between this glass that our viewers have in front of them and seeing us. And they'll make their own judgments about us. But charisma is important. But after all the excitements we've had over the last 5 years, maybe Keir Starmer, looking a little bit dull, earnest, but like he can do the job, might not be a bad idea.
I think George Galloway was right about Keir Starmer and Mr. Sunak being two sides of the same rear. And with regards Theresa May, I think one area I can commend her on is the fact that she did stay in the Commons after she left the highest office, and unlike some of her predecessors.
And JJ, she didn't do an Edward Heath. I mean, when she had a pop at people, it was on a point of principle. And I'm afraid I can't find anything to agree with on George Galloway. We're going to have our own difference there. If he told me the sun is shining, I would still disagree, even if it was.
Jonathan, great to hear from you this morning.